Hi there, and welcome to the Main Idea podcast. Thanks for being here. I am Jen David Lang, and my passion is helping school leaders learn. I read lots of education and leadership books, and I save you time by sharing only the most compelling and impactful books with you. I am very excited that today I'm talking to Paul Bambrick-Santoyo. People often ask me, given that I've read, I don't know, hundreds, thousands of books, which is my favorite. And that's kind of like asking me, which is my favorite daughter. I don't have one. But I do often say that one of my favorite authors, really one of my favorite educational leaders who is impacting countless schools today, is Paul Bambrick-Santoyo. First of all, as someone who has led schools himself and trained tens of thousands of leaders, his work is grounded in what actually works in the field. Plus, I don't know how he does it, but he really captures his ideas so succinctly and clearly for the rest of us. You might know Paul's name. He's written several outstanding books. He's written, I think your first was Driven by Data, and then Point 2.0, Leverage Leadership 2.0, now Get Better Faster 2.0, and more, several on literacy. Or maybe you know him because you've attended a workshop of his. I have. He has trained over 40,000 leaders, I believe, worldwide, drawing on his experience co-founding a principal training fellowship and also leading urban schools in Newark, New Jersey that got academic results that were just outstanding. They were among the highest in US urban schools. But I also admire him because he has a heart. He describes the urgency for this work and who it is for. He says, quote, "It's for educators who believe so deeply in children and love them that they will do everything to achieve the best learning outcomes for every student who walks through their doors. With that comes the need for school leaders, like all of you, who will coach and support teachers, seeing the greatness in them to make this possible." That just moves me. That's why he wrote this book, to help school leaders coach and support teachers. And this is the book we're going to talk about today, Get Better Faster 2.0, a 90-day plan for coaching new teachers. That's Get Better Faster 2.0, a 90-day plan for coaching new teachers. With that, let me welcome Paul Bambrick-Santoyo. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Jen. Pleasure to be here.
I'm so glad you are here. So, well, before we get into the content, you've led such an interesting life, including spending 6 years working in a bilingual school in Mexico. Is there anything about you personally or professionally that people should know that I didn't include in the intro before we jump in?
You did a wonderful intro. I have three children and a wife of 29 years and empty nester for the first time this past year, and so it's a beautiful new chapter in my journey.
Wonderful. I love how, yes, we need a new word for empty nest. That was me last year, so we can go. Now we have time for a coffee. All right, so let's jump right in. So why did you write this book, Paul?
I think our world is in a period of tremendous change, and that change is no different for our schools. We think about what we're facing. We've come out of COVID. We're back to some sort of normalcy, and yet we have such uncertainty in our world. But then there's the rise of the science of reading, high quality instructional materials, and now the surge in AI.
Yeah.
And all of this change, and depending on who you talk to, they say either AI is going to solve everything or destroy everything, depending on who you talk to. But amidst all of this, what I have seen in the schools I continue to work with every day is that one thing hasn't changed, and that's the power of a coach. That we continue to see that you can have every best curriculum you want. You can have every resource in the book. But if a teacher doesn't have a good coach, not all of them will thrive on their own.
Mm.
And that's why I wrote Get Better Faster 2.0, was to affirm the power of face-to-face coaching and then how much it also builds on years of additional insights gained from leaders across the globe of what makes the best sort of coaching. And with that coaching, then I truly believe all teachers can fly.
Hmm. And I'm going to add to that because I think that because things are changing so much, I mean, I don't know what you see, but I often see teachers resort back to what they saw when they were in the classroom, right? We all have years
Right.
of experience examining teaching, that of our teachers. So if the world is changing so much, we've never seen anybody teach fourth grade, weaving AI in, right? We haven't seen a lot of that. So if we want to do something new and impactful, um, we need a coach to help us along. So I love that. Thanks for sharing that context. So I want to start with what I understand to be the overview of this book. Paul does a brilliant job of laying out the what and the how of coaching new teachers through the first 90 days of their work. And for the what, I'm going to start with the what. He pulled out the basic skills teachers need to develop a foundation. And you may say, well, so what? Lots of authors do that, right? There's lots of books about rolling out classroom management skills, routines, procedures, all of that. But Paul does two things. First of all, he outlines not just the classroom management routines, but also the rigorous instruction moves that teachers need for the first 90 days. So imagine like two parallel strands, the classroom management moves and the rigor moves. And then he does something unique, which is to put them in order. That's not something I've seen before. I've read Doug Lemov, John Safier. They certainly lay out lots of foundational teacher skills, but Paul puts them in order, right? This is what we do in the summer, the first 90 skills, the next 90, sorry, 30. What we do in the summer, the first 30 days, the next 30 days, and the next 30 days. And so you literally have a scope and sequence for management and for management and a scope and sequence for rigor. So let me stop there. Paul, did I get that right? And if so, how did you come to outline a rigor and management trajectory of skills for new teachers? Where did you get these skills from, and how did you put them in the order that new teachers need?
Well, the thing that has been always so important to me as a writer is to write about collective wisdom, not just ideas that come from my head.
Mm,
And so this sequence is rooted in the work with thousands of leaders across the country. When I made the first draft of the sequence and I presented it to a working group of highly effective leaders who had been coaching, and how I defined highly effective is they were taking newer teachers and coaching them faster to proficiency than others. And we said, here's a draft. Take a look at it. What do you think? And they revised it and they edited it and we added and we changed the order. And if you look at the new sequence in this book, you'll see it's slightly different than the original because we've learned along the way.
mhm,
For example, we used to leave discourse all the way till the last 30 days
mm,
until we realized you can do the basic cycle of turn and talks as a basic routine and procedure near the very beginning. You don't have to wait to get students talking.
yeah,
Now, leading discourse after that is still the most complex part of teaching.
yeah.
And so, really, this is rooted in the experience of leaders like people on this podcast. You try it out, you see if it works, you see what does and doesn't, and you get feedback. And that's why I think we're on version 97 of this scope and sequence, because we're constantly revising it to reflect the best practices of leaders across the globe.
Mm. So if people access it online, they can get the most current and up-to-date one, or how do you?
Well, the one in the book is the most up-to-date one. That's version 97. And
There's,
then every year we revise it a couple times during the year and then publish one. If you attend any training with me, you'll get the latest version in the moment you attend the training.
Gotcha. That's great. And I just want to dispel this idea, when you read this title, Get Better Faster, if you picture like, leaders pushing teachers to work really fast, like that's not what it's about. It's about a thoughtful progression so that teachers learn more skills in less time.
Well said.
So yes. So could you, for listeners, give an idea of what you mean by like one management skill that teachers need to master and one rigor skill and where it
Yeah.
is in your 90 days cycle?
Yeah, there's a myth in education, and some people think you have to get culture right before you can do instruction. And
Mm,
others say, well, you just got to focus on instruction because kids got to learn, don't worry about culture. And most of you know that if you don't have both, it doesn't work. And if you focus entirely on culture and you say, well, for 90 days or 2 months, we're not going to learn anything, so just got to get the routines right, that's lost time. Those children will never get back.
yeah.
And so this was built with the idea that you're working on both at the same time.
Mm,
And although you're working on both, you're working on the similar component of both at the same time. So in the first 30 days, you're laying out routines,
mhm,
routines for management, but also academic routines, how you do independent work, like how you function in a model. And so that way they look like they go side by side, which makes it easier to imagine how you use them.
yep.
So for example, in a management action step, one of the first things that's the most difficult for any teacher and leader is precision of language.
Mm,
There's a big difference between what we think in our head and what comes out of our mouth.
Hmm.
And we have total clarity of what we mean up here, and then what we say is not clear for the other person who is listening.
Hmm.
And so if you just say to a new teacher, you need clear directions in class, they will try. And then you say, yeah, like just be clear,
What does that
but they
mean?
won't
Yeah.
know what to do.
Yeah.
And so the core idea of this whole sequence is that the smaller and more bite-sized the action step, the quicker the growth.
Yeah.
And this is counterintuitive, but one small action step that you master will grow you faster than a large one that you're struggling with. And we pulled that idea from just searching all sorts of other fields. If you
Mhm.
see the best tennis instructors, they get your grip right first and then your swing without a tennis ball before they ever go to something more advanced.
Mm.
The best musicians work on mastering a stanza one at a time
Mhm.
rather than trying to do an ambitious set of 20 things and getting none right. Or
Mhm.
the best example, if you ask your loved one right now, how many things can you work on getting better at a time? They'll say either zero or one. And so, well, for teachers, it's no different.
Yeah.
So we take this idea of clear directions and break it down into simple what to do directions, which we call first chunk your directions,
Yep.
meaning just give them one at a time.
Yep.
Tell the children to stand or tell the children to turn to their partner, then make eye contact, then talk. And then you then after you do that, you make sure each line is bite-sized. It shouldn't take you more than a few words. Open your book to page 57. Don't say anything more. Let them all get to page 57 before we move on. And then check for understanding. Ask them, okay, what are you about to do? That is something that meets the criteria of a good action step in that it's visible. A teacher can visualize it. It's measurable. You can go into a classroom and say, yep, it happened.
Mhm.
And it's bite-sized. You can make that change next class. I like to say, if you can't make the change in a week, the action step isn't small enough.
That's very
And
concrete.
so
Yeah.
what to do directions influence your entire class? Because when you're clearer, then all of a sudden the students know what they're supposed to be doing. And then you can distinguish between students who are doing it, not doing that because they're confused, but because they're not engaged in this moment. And the rigor side is no different. You know, one of the things that we're so passionate about in education is getting to a place where students can engage in discourse.
Hmm.
And but it is the daunting practice because it's easy when you're modeling as a teacher because you're in control. When
Hmm.
you're getting them to work independently, you're in control. But as soon as you do discourse, I've heard a teacher say it's like a squirrel. If it runs up the wrong tree, you can never get it back.
Hmm.
And so leading discourse is really hard. But you can begin to teach them what we call launch a discourse cycle,
Hmm.
which is simply everybody writes, make sure every student writes about a prompt, turn and talk, cold call, then volleyball. And that's the idea of call on not the first student who raises their hand, but any student in the room so they're ready. And volleyball is the idea from Doug Lemov, like let 3 or 4 people speak before you do. Those are all observable, measurable, and bite-sized actions. Now, maybe the teacher won't know what to do when the student comes up with a crazy answer,
Hmm.
but they've mastered the beginning of getting students thinking and talking about the work and getting all of them to do it. And so you've taken a daunting prospect and started to master it one piece at a time.
So in the scope and sequence, your suggestions are bite size, the moves, and
Correct.
this precision of language and launch a discourse cycle. Where in the 90 days, where does that usually fall?
Yeah, the what to do is the very first week of school.
Okay.
The first set of action steps are before school starts. If you have any orientation or
Yeah.
pre-service time with your
Yeah.
teachers, it's
Yeah.
about planning your basic routines,
Yeah.
planning your basic lessons.
Yeah.
But the first days of school, if and what to do directions will make or break your class. So
Yeah.
that's right away. And then launching the discourse cycle is right away in the next 30 days.
Yeah.
You start actually no, it's in the same one. Yeah, it's days 1 through 30.
Okay.
It's the last one in that sequence after you've set up independent practice and how to monitor student work, then you can set up your discourse cycle.
That's great. And for people listening, I don't know if they saw, they can't see, but Paul just looked down to see where it was in the scope and sequence. And he really describes in the book how, oh, you're holding it up. Great. Thank you. He describes in the book how, as a leader, you observe a teacher And you really can look through the scope and sequence because, again, you only want to give bite-sized feedback. So starting from the beginning, is this the issue the teacher's having? No, she's mastered that. This, no, that. Oh, okay, here we are. We're on step 4 or 5. So you really can go through and make sure you're commenting on the right thing at the right time. So you're commenting on the launching of a discourse cycle rather than, where you would be further down the line.
And just to say that to you, Jen, yeah, people laugh when I say this. I wrote the book, but I can't remember all the action steps.
No.
I print it out.
Yeah.
This goes with me in every classroom I ever observe.
Yeah.
And I'm always having it open
Yeah.
because in the moment as an observer, you've got 1,000 thoughts of what to focus on.
Yeah.
And this sort of quiets the mind and lets me choose rather than come up with a new idea.
Yeah.
Could you observe on your own? Of course.
Yeah.
But then you're sifting through 1,000 thoughts that aren't in any order. And this gives you a place to sort of anchor yourself and make your thinking more precise.
Gives you a continuum rather than a checklist when you walk into
Correct.
the classroom. So
Yeah.
I like that. And, and by the way, if you're listening to this mid-year, that's fine. Paul writes in the book that you can start this 90-day cycle any time in the year. Sometimes they're veteran teachers who have missed some of these basic steps. So it's completely fine.
I would go further than that, Jen. In
Okay.
the last 30 days, we're going into pretty sophisticated things about discourse.
Mm,
I think what we've discovered is they work for almost every teacher you can imagine.
yes.
With the except of your master teachers, most of them have some place they could work on within the sequence. And so we end up using it all over the place
Yeah.
because you can just jump to the stage they're in. You don't have to start from the beginning.
Right. And I do like that I like the phrase academic routine, right? Because it's what are the routines? It's almost like Ron Richards' thinking routines that can be done over and over. It's not specific to this unit or this lesson. And another thing that I wanted to point out that I didn't mention is that the book is filled with QR codes or an email, a website for you to see videos. So imagine the power of being able to watch a video of both the teaching move, right? What does the teaching move look like to, give directions with precise language? Or what does the teaching move look like to launch discourse? But then also some of the videos also have the coaching moves, which we'll get into next. So I think that's a brilliant asset. And there's a password in the book that you can immediately get access to these 70 videos in this 2.0 version. So thank you for that. Let's transition a little bit to the coaching skills. So the scope and sequence is the what. What are the skills new teachers should be learning? But then how, right? The how. How do we get new teachers to learn these important skills? And so Paul really provides that kind of guidance for principals, APs, instructional coaches, really anyone who is coaching teachers through these moves. And he writes in the book, and I agree, we spend too much time on evaluation, right? We should evaluate less, coach more. Evaluate less, coach more. And so you have 3 overarching principles for coaching to make it successful. So you've already talked a little bit about it, but could you outline them as 3 clear principles that guide this work?
Yeah, sure. We talked about the first one, which is make it bite-sized,
Yeah.
which is just coach one skill at a time to mastery, and you're actually going to move faster. So I'll talk about the second two.
Okay.
And the first one, I'll tell a little analogy to lay it for you. Oh, well, I'll name it first. What you practice is what you value. And the last one is frequent feedback. So let's go back to what you practice is what you value. I'm a big sports fan, and so I don't know if you watched, but just this past week were the World Athletic Championships, in which the best sprinters and long distance runners and track and field athletes came together in Tokyo for the World Championships. And one of the most electrifying sprinters right now in the world is Sydney McLaughlin, who runs both the 400-meter hurdles and the 400-meter flat. And when you think about what these extraordinary athletes do, yes, they have talent, clearly, but they would get nowhere without practice. But it's not just go off and practice by yourself. You can go anywhere and watch people practicing something, but the greatest growth is when you're practicing guided by a coach. You will never become a superstar athlete without a coach guiding you in productive, effective practice.
Mhm.
In medicine, you would never want a surgeon operating on your child unless they had had chances to practice and get coached before they did. And so, if we value something, we practice it. If we are spiritual, we go to church or temple or mosque, or we meditate. And so, in the field of education, if we value teaching, we should practice it. And if we value coaching, we should practice our coaching. This shouldn't be a novel idea, but it still is.
It is, yeah.
I know I was not ever asked to practice. If I did it, I was by myself in my room looking in the mirror, like rehearsing my lessons or something
Yeah.
to that effect. But now that we've been able to see it happen and we've noticed the highest achieving schools and highest gaining schools in the world, they've all created a culture of practice where practice becomes normal. And it's funny because I was just talking with LeVar Jenkins, who has the highest gaining school in Washington, D.C. called Burroughs Elementary School.
Wow.
And he was just describing for me how the first time his coach, when he was an assistant principal, asked him to actually practice giving feedback. He's like, it was so scary. I wasn't used to it. And so part of my brain just wanted to resist it.
Hmm.
But as soon as I practiced, I felt better. I felt more confident. It just became a part of the way I did things. And so great coaching involves creating a culture where you're ready for teachers to practice at all times. And the only thing that makes it awkward is if you don't do it consistently and if you show you're uncomfortable. If you act like this is normal, it's amazing how quickly teachers are like, I want to practice because I see how much better I am when I do.
Can I
So
pause you
that's the
there? One sec.
yeah.
So for people for whom this is a new idea, to paint a picture. So imagine, right, a typical principal's giving feedback to a teacher, right? I'm the teacher, Paul's giving me feedback. We're together, we're in my classroom. Um, and he watched me teach a lesson, and I was too verbose in my instructions, right? So he wants me to use precise language. So imagine he gives me some tips, right? Jen, use 3 to 5 words, right? And then I literally stand up in our feedback meeting and I try giving the instructions again. And Paul says, okay, now, chunk your, do this. And I literally stand up in front of Paul as if he's my students and I do it. That's what he means by practice. It's a very different type of feedback meeting than I think a lot of people are used to. So is there anything you recommend to create that culture of feedback? Because it is weird, right? I would feel weird standing up in front of you and, Jen, do this podcast again with fewer words. What do you think?
Well, for any school or community which doesn't have that, we talk about I talk about this in Leverage Leadership 2.0. Anytime you want to create a new culture, you have to roll out your vision.
Mhm.
And you roll it out by modeling it. And so you pick a moment at any time of year you can start. And you can just say, if you're a principal, for example, you can say to your whole staff, listen, I've learned this new idea. I'm practicing now. And we're going to make practice a part of our meeting. Here's some examples of practice in medicine and sports and music. We're going to try it.
Yeah.
And so right now I'm going to pick a veteran teacher who's going to be committed to me and someone who's, willing to try it. We're going to model for you what that's going to look like. Guess what? We're going to be doing that moving forward.
Yeah.
If you roll it out,
Mhm.
the first reaction you're going to get from teachers who have never experienced it is going to be, I'm just going to wait him out. Like he's going to give up on this in a week. I'm just going to be
Yeah, this
resistant
too
until he
shall
gives up
pass.
on
Yeah.
it. Like this too shall pass. So the first time, and then there's what we call the cultures of investment or resistance. The first time there might be grumpy, they might complain, they might give you nonverbal passive aggressiveness.
Yep.
But the fourth time you do it, they're like, okay, I guess it's the way we do things.
Hmm.
And by the eighth time, they're asking you for the chance to practice.
Mm.
And so the key to make it work is your consistency.
Yep.
If you have one person go to the teacher's room and complain, say, can you believe they asked me to stand up and role play? And the other person says, they did it for me as well. It shuts down the complaint. If they say, I didn't have to do it, you've created a problem.
Right.
And
Right.
so rolling it out, showing them a model and being consistent allows you to create a culture. Rick Romaine, who's a principal of PS 268, he went from the lowest achieving school in his district to the highest in 3 years.
Wow.
Unbelievable. And he said, The first time I got up and modeled practice for my staff, they laughed at me.
Yeah. Yep.
And when I said, we're going to do this to become the number one school in the district, they laughed.
Yep.
Now they're asking for it. Not all of them, but
Yep.
most. And so that's the key to making practice a part of your school.
Yeah, you have to make people feel comfortable being vulnerable by going first. Patrick Lencioni says,
Yes.
as the leader, you go first, and that will help create the culture. So the first principle, when we give feedback, it needs to be bite-sized. The second is we have to practice what we preach. We have to practice, or give our teachers an opportunity to practice. And then the third one is give feedback frequently. So how do you do that?
So to do that, I'll just give another example. So Katie Harshman is a principal of Minnequa Elementary School in Pueblo, Colorado. And she went from red on the Colorado framework to green. It tripped up like 7 steps and like doubled her proficiency.
Wow.
And she was in a context where she had very little time with teachers. As a part of the union contract, she could only meet with teachers for 40 minutes a week. Like she had one block to meet with teachers in the time period. She's like, so I didn't have a chance to do a lot. And she said, but I just made it my point that the number one thing we're going to do is frequent feedback.
Yep.
And so she literally she was sharing with me, she created a schedule she had observed the teachers, she had distributed the load of teachers among her leadership team. I mean that like teachers will coach other teachers, she'll take some, and like I'd observe them all on Monday. And on Monday afternoon, I would meet with all of them for 15 minutes and we'd give some feedback and practice. And then I just observed them and gave feedback in the moment the rest of the week. She's like, I didn't have more time. I didn't have more meetings I could take advantage of. And she claims it's the biggest driver that she said has contributed to her success.
Mm.
Making feedback frequent highlights that the real separator from okay coaches to great coaches is their consistency.
Yep.
I'd rather 10 coaching meetings that are okay and happen all 10 weeks than one great one every 10 weeks.
Yep.
And yet Marzano in his book Effective Supervision says that the average teacher is observed once every other year.
Yep.
And the average rookie once, I think it's 1 to 2 times a year.
Yes.
And so this book is not about a dog and pony show for coaches, like one great meeting that looks good on paper.
No.
It's about doing it consistently week to week.
Yes.
And over again, that boils down to rethinking about your time as an instructional leader, whether you are a teacher and coach or a full-time principal or assistant principal, how you re-envision your time to make this a priority is the third key principle that I would say makes the difference.
I want to highlight 2 things that you said that people might have missed, but are very important. One, don't do it alone, right? If you have more than 15, 20 teachers, dividing up the work, have your assistant principals, coaches, even teacher leaders. What if you each took, 15 teachers? That's one thing. And then 2, a lot of leaders put observations in their schedule, right? I'm going to observe these 3 teachers between 10:30 and noon, right? But the key, you can observe up the wazoo, but if you're not giving feedback, what's the point, right? So you should really be putting feedback conversations into your schedule so you don't spend half the week, oh, can you meet then? No, I can't meet then. So put your feedback and debriefing conversations in your schedule. And there's a model of that in the book, and also I think in Leveraged Leadership as well.
And I think I would highlight that, Jen, in this world of AI.
Yeah.
I've seen the most inappropriate use of AI I've seen over the last month is tools that will help you deliver an email to your teachers with feedback from the lesson you just observed.
Yeah.
Written feedback does not work except for that one hungry teacher who wants to do it on their own. So more written feedback is not what we're talking about. We're talking about more face-to-face feedback is the lever of change for teacher development.
Yeah. And well, part of what you're trying to do is you are in the feedback meetings, you're trying to help teachers internalize and be able to grow themselves also when you're not there. And an email doesn't do that. So to have that reflective conversation, that practicing opportunity helps them to grow. I want to step back because you talk about, how important this is for new teachers because talk about change. We're living in a time where there's incredible turnover, particularly of new teachers. The statistic I had read was 20 to 40% leave in the first 5 years, but in this book, you found a statistic 44% of teachers leave within the first 5 years. So, can you connect that to why this book is important?
I think that's a reflection of a new era we're in. Most job permanence has changed.
Mm,
You look at every field, I think it's not just an educational problem.
mm,
I think the stat is that our parents had 1 to 2 jobs a year. And we have like 6 to 8, and our children will have 30 to 40 in the course of a lifetime. Like,
right, right,
it is not normal to stay at a job anymore. And
right.
so I think we have to accept that this is the case
Mm,
and build schools that can adjust to that reality.
hmm.
And if we create great schools, it'll let teachers to stay longer. But in the meantime, we have to work with them. And they're the future for our children.
But it's partially a function of yes, yes, in our parents' days, one job for your entire career, two maybe. But I think part of it is also the job has gotten honestly harder. And a big reason teachers often leave is they don't have the skills, right? The management and the rigor skills, and they want to feel, particularly Gen Z, they want to feel a sense of success, and they're not. So this approach helps them feel a sense of success and they feel like they're not seen. But unfortunately, educational leaders are one of the top reasons teachers leave. And so when you have leaders who are trained in these types of coaching skills, that also is showing teachers that leaders are invested, they're willing to sit with you, work with you, and that's likely to keep them in schools.
Jen,
And
it's a great point, Jen. You're
yeah,
totally right.
yeah,
Mark Brackett's book, Permission to Feel, he's the head of the Center for Emotional Intelligence for Yale University and a professor there. And he says that the number one factor that contributes to retention is how invested they are in their leader.
yeah,
And so I like to say in my trainings, they come for the mission, but they stay for the people
yeah, yeah,
and they stay for you
yeah,
and the quality of your leadership. And people don't stay for someone who just tries to make them happy. They stay for someone who makes them better.
yeah. They
And
want to
that's
grow.
counterintuitive, for a
Yeah,
new leader to think, I just want to make sure they respect me or like me.
yeah,
No, they will respect you
yeah.
when you help them get better.
Well, and a
And
myth
I
is
think
that
that's
teachers
that.
don't want to learn. They do. They don't want to sit in an in-service
Yes.
that's sit and get in, get help,
Yes.
but they do. We all do, right? I mean, would you be happy
Yeah.
doing, with the level of what you knew 20, 30 years ago? No, like we all want to grow. So they do want to grow. They just want to do so in a way that's effective. And then I want to just put in this selfish piece also. You wrote in the book that 80% of the problems that leaders deal with come from a small handful of teachers, right? There are teachers who are genuinely struggling with classroom management, with getting kids to learn, and they're causing 80% of your problems. So those are your headaches and that's your time. So if you can do this work preventatively, you're really helping to maximize your time and your benefit in helping everyone.
Absolutely.
A theme I heard in your book repeatedly is about urgency, right? That one of the myths is that teachers just get better over time, right? But then you say, but students only get to be in first grade once, right? Or students only get 10th grade chemistry once, right? And do we really want to sacrifice student learning while we're waiting for teacher experience to come magically? So is there anything about, why this work is so urgent that you want to add other than that little tidbit that I quoted from your book?
I mean, I think when I visit high school classrooms and at the high schools that I would lead, and so the students would, even if I'm the superintendent, schools would teachers, students, especially high school students, would recognize who I was.
Mhm.
And you can recall just walking into a classroom where a teacher is just not doing well, and they just turn around and look at you
Mm,
with utter disappointment. And
mm.
like, and they're so respectful. They're saying,
Oh,
why am I in this classroom?
oh, yeah,
And it's just devastating
yeah,
because they know enough to know.
yeah, they
And,
do.
and they're very smart.
They
And they're
are.
waiting for someone to expect that of them.
Yes,
And I just feel like if students are at the center of what we do,
yes,
that we have to be devoted to developing our teachers as fast as possible because the
yes,
students are just waiting for them.
yes.
Uh, we move slower than they do.
Yeah. Well, talk about developing teachers fast. I don't remember which of your books this is from and if this is from a 1.0, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you said that with this type of training and approach to new teachers, that a teacher following, the ideas from Get Better Faster can develop more skills in 1 year than the typical teacher learns in 20. Is that still something you believe?
It's still, yes.
Yeah.
One of the things I do with my work is I study the proof points that
Yep.
I've come to develop, the schools that are proving that it works. And I was just in one last week, Teresa at Horace Mann in Denver, Colorado.
Hmm.
And what you will notice when you walk around those schools in on September 20th
Yep.
is that you can't spot the rookie teacher.
Wow.
You can spot the teacher who is extraordinary,
Sure.
who's been there for a little while, but the gap between the rookie teacher and the second and third year teacher, you can't see in these extraordinary schools.
Oh,
And
wow.
I think that speaks to it. I really believe that there are only maybe 1 or 2% of teachers who just probably won't make it as teachers.
Yeah.
I think 98, 99% will with the right coach and with their desire to be a teacher. Some will find they don't want it, but I think with the right coach, we can get most of the teachers over the bar.
Yeah.
And so that's for me the ultimate sign, because especially what happens in these proof point schools is you create a culture of instruction that's so strong, it elevates the new teacher. It's not just your coaching, it's the
Right.
fact that the teachers around them are coaching more consistently, and that makes it easier for them. And so it's a ripple effect, a multiplier effect on the quality of a school.
Well, it is this deep belief in teachers, this true belief that you have that runs through all of your books and your work, and I so appreciate that. I will end with a quote from the end of your book. It's hard to get through this a lot. I mean, it's just it's very chock full. But when I got to the end, you wrote, "There is no perfect teacher. We can't create one, not in the first 90 days of teaching, not in the first year of teaching, not in 10 years of teaching. But what we can do is embrace a clear pathway to improvement. We can create a better teacher." And that's so clear from you. So thank you for your work. Before we end, where can people learn more about you and your work, Paul?
Yeah, you can access any book, or you can go to our website. It's a new information will be there soon, but leverageleaders.org. And just you can also find help to, if you want to attend a workshop to learn more, to practice it yourself rather than just read about it. You've got information right there that you could sign up to do.
And
Yeah.
you do get people up and
And
practicing.
if
Yeah.
if you get results in your school and you want to raise your own ceiling, the Leverage Leadership Institute, we select 25 leaders every year who've already demonstrated gains in achievement and want to train themselves to be able to coach others to do the same. So if you get to that place, come apply. We
That's great.
we welcome you with open arms.
So no such thing as a perfect leader. We keep working. Yeah.
Correct.
Thank you. I will put those in the show notes. And just a quick lightning round. Could you give us, if you could distill it, one main idea of the book, Get Better Faster 2.0?
Sure. Maybe I'll give you two.
Okay.
The first I said is be the model.
Mm,
To quote LeVar, you know, when you're a coach, you have a lot of power,
mm,
but the ultimate power you have is signaling to your staff what it should look like. And you do that by your modeling.
mm,
That means if you ask them to practice, you practice. If you ask them to do this, you do it. When they see you doing that, when they see you in their classrooms, when you see them modeling side by side what you expect of them, they will gravitate towards you.
mm.
Your model speaks more than your words.
Okay.
And the second thing I would say is use your tools.
Mm,
Could you come up with other action steps? Sure, you can. Could you come up with your own feedback? Sure, but you're wasting your time.
mm.
You've got some tools to save you time, to give you more time to coach and less time to think. And so use them.
We
And
spend
you
too
will be
much
strong.
time in this profession recreating the wheel, I think.
Yes. Yes, exactly right. There you go.
Okay, great. Thank you for those two main ideas. Be the model and use your tools. And then this is a lot. So let's say as a leader listening wants to start something somewhere tomorrow, what's a high leverage action to start this work or to further this work?
Uh, Outside of just attend a training, because then you can like have a chance to practice it, I would just say print out the scope and sequence and carry it around with you, and to start to identify the action sets for the teachers you coach in your building using the sequence. Start to narrow your language and focus.
Mm,
And that would be the first place to start. And the second is find a partner that you can practice giving feedback that
mm,
gets teachers to practice.
mm,
Don't do it by yourself. You won't get as far. Just find a partner. And if you find a partner, it doesn't have to be from your school, and you guys are practicing with each other how to coach,
mm.
you will get better so much faster yourself as a coach.
Wonderful. Wow, fantastic. And finally, any resource you suggest for people who want to learn more?
Think I've answered that question. I
Yeah.
think you've
Okay.
got all the resources you need right there.
Great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I always learn when I talk to you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jen.